The Galactic Council had never feared humanity, not yet, not in those early days when humans were little more than a curiosity, a species confined to a pale blue planet on the edge of the spiral arm. In the Council's vast chambers, suspended above a gravity-defying pit of glowing energy, delegates from 1,000 civilizations debated the fate of countless worlds. They spoke of threats that could destabilize entire sectors, of emergent species that might one day challenge their dominion. The name Earth drifted occasionally in their conversations, mentioned with mild amusement. Humans were clever, yes, inventive perhaps, but fragile, limited, laughably primitive. They had no fleets to speak of, no weapons that could threaten the empires that spanned entire galaxies. The Council chuckled quietly at reports describing human ingenuity, clever tactics, stubborn resistance against natural disasters, or local conflicts on their planet. Interesting, but inconsequential, they said. Yet, in the quiet corners of the galaxy, something far greater was growing. Humans, as always, did not rush. They did not announce themselves, nor did they parade their accomplishments. They had learned early that subtlety was as potent as force. On Earth, scientists and engineers toiled in silence, unlocking principles of physics that had eluded even the most advanced alien civilizations. They understood energy, gravitation, and the hidden currents of space with an intuition that bordered on preternatural. From these discoveries arose the Builders, autonomous constructs capable of manipulating matter, energy, and even the flow of time across interstellar distances. The Builders could act as scouts, engineers, and tacticians, their operations invisible to alien detection. Entire star systems could be altered, not through war, but through precise, imperceptible control of physics itself. The first anomaly arrived quietly, almost innocuously. A small scouting fleet from a prominent alien empire, sent to survey an unremarkable system humans had settled quietly, began reporting strange disruptions. Engines faltered despite normal maintenance. Navigational sensors displayed conflicting readings. Energy conduits overloaded and surged without explanation. Command protocols scrambled intermittently. At first, fleet commanders suspected minor malfunctions or sabotage, but as they attempted to leave the system, the failures intensified. Ships veered off course, colliding with gravitational distortions that had no natural explanation. Communications became erratic. Data streams scrambled in ways that seemed deliberate. No humans were present. Yet humanity's presence was undeniable, orchestrating events across vast distances with a precision that defied comprehension. Reports reached the Council. Initially, they dismissed them as exaggeration. It was impossible, they argued. No species so young, so isolated, could exercise such influence over star systems beyond their borders. But the anomalies multiplied. Ships attempting to enter or traverse human-claimed space found themselves trapped in subtle gravitational maelstroms or energy currents that frustrated navigation. Fleets split apart inexplicably, communications delayed or distorted, weapons systems misfired at critical moments. Exploratory probes vanished entirely, only to be found years later drifting through regions of warped space with no sign of malfunction or damage. The message was subtle but terrifying. Humans were everywhere and nowhere at once, operating with an intelligence and reach that no other species had ever exhibited. In response, the Council convened an emergency session. For the first time, they faced the terrifying realization that this young species might be more than just a curiosity. Humanity could be a true threat. They debated the implications for days, their chambers alive with frantic discourse. Delegates from long-standing empires argued that humanity must be contained, isolated, and observed. Others warned that direct engagement could provoke unknown consequences. And yet, all were unanimous in one critical point. Humans were dangerous. Not in the sense of brute force, not in conventional terms, but in the subtle, inexorable way they manipulated the galaxy itself. And so the Council issued the first formal decree. All member civilizations were instructed to avoid human sectors, to respect their borders, and under no circumstances to provoke or engage them militarily. The edict warned that any breach could provoke catastrophic consequences. Humanity did not respond. They neither protested nor flaunted their power. They continued their quiet expansion, deepening their understanding of the cosmos, deploying builders to extend their reach, and observing the galaxy with patience and precision. Their strategy was simple: wait, prepare, and ensure that the galaxy's perception of them remained underestimated until the moment their inevitability became undeniable. The first fleets that defied the Council's warning discovered the truth. Entire squadrons failed spectacularly, not because of superior human firepower, but because humans had learned to manipulate the environment in ways alien minds could not predict. Navigation grids failed in perfect synchronization, engines flared unexpectedly, and weapon systems shut down as if reality itself rejected the actions the aliens attempted. Human vessels appeared at precise moments to exploit these failures, striking with surgical accuracy before vanishing again, leaving entire fleets bewildered and shattered. Alien leaders began to whisper of the inevitability of humans, of a species that could manipulate the very fabric of space and time without ever revealing its hand. By the end of this first revelation, the Council understood the magnitude of their mistake. Humans were dangerous in ways they had never conceived, operating across distances, systems, and even dimensions that the Council could not control or influence. The decree to declare humanity dangerous had been correct, but even this declaration was insufficient to capture the full scope of what they were witnessing. The young species that had once seemed so insignificant now cast a shadow over the entire galaxy. Humanity's influence was inevitable, unstoppable, and silent, yet its presence reshaped the destinies of entire civilizations. And so, the galaxy's oldest powers began to recognize the truth. Mocking humanity was folly. Underestimating them was suicidal, and attempting to control them was impossible. They had dismissed, laughed, and belittled a species that had quietly mastered the principles of the cosmos. Now, that same species, unseen yet omnipotent, was preparing to show the galaxy the full extent of its power. Humanity was dangerous, not in the way the Council had feared, but in a way that would forever alter the course of history, the order of stars, and the definition of inevitability itself. The first alien fleets that ignored the Council's warnings discovered humanity's true reach and immediately regretted it. These fleets were vast, composed of the most formidable warships, each vessel bristling with weapons capable of leveling planets, with crews trained for decades in tactics designed to outmaneuver even the most cunning opponents. They expected resistance in the form of conventional combat, human ships that could be engaged, destroyed, or outflanked. What they found instead was a power so subtle, so absolute, it defied comprehension. Human fleets were barely visible, appearing only when necessary. But the builders, humans' autonomous constructs, were everywhere, unseen, reshaping reality itself to ensure every encounter ended in human favor. As fleets approached human-controlled sectors, navigational errors multiplied. Engines flared unpredictably, and subspace channels twisted like ribbons in the void, sending messages and data streams into loops of incoherence. Entire squadrons found themselves immobilized, their formations dissolving under the influence of distortions they could neither detect nor counter. Alien commanders, long accustomed to dominance, realized too late that their strategies had been anticipated, calculated, and countered long before they had been conceived. Humans had turned patience, foresight, and understanding of the cosmos into a weapon more potent than fleets, more absolute than armies, and more precise than any strike the galaxy had ever known. The builders operated like an invisible symphony. Every gravitational anomaly, every distortion in energy flow, every subtle shift in subspace currents was deliberate. Fleets that attempted to attack or even observe human colonies found themselves trapped in labyrinths of impossible physics. Planets that had once been defenseless were rendered untouchable not through brute force but by the quiet manipulation of cosmic mechanics. A single misstep would send a fleet spiraling into a gravitational eddy, engines overloading, weapons misfiring, communication networks collapsing. Alien tacticians began to realize that humanity did not merely fight, they orchestrated outcomes on scales that spanned star systems and light years, rendering conventional conflict obsolete. The first direct human encounters were brief but decisive. When alien ships detected human vessels at the edge of their sensors, they attempted to engage with overwhelming firepower, only to find themselves neutralized with precision that seemed almost sentient. Weapon systems failed at critical moments, shields fluctuated inexplicably, and propulsion systems were rerouted into dead zones where ships drifted helplessly. Human pilots, calm and composed, executed maneuvers that alien crews could not anticipate, striking where the enemy least expected, then vanishing as if they had never existed. Entire fleets, the pride of the galaxy, were reduced to helpless clusters drifting in the void, their crews scrambling to understand the forces arrayed against them. The Council watched in horror as reports poured in from every sector. Empires that had once been confident in their mastery of war now trembled. Even the most advanced civilizations could not comprehend the scale of humanity's control, the subtlety of their influence, or the reach of their builders. The Council had warned them humanity was dangerous, but now the term seemed almost inadequate. Dangerous was an understatement. Humanity was inevitable, omnipresent, and inescapable. The quiet patience of a species underestimated by all had become the galaxy's greatest force. Meanwhile, humanity continued its work with characteristic silence. Their colonies expanded, scientific research progressed, and the builders extended their reach further into the cosmos. Humans did not need to boast, to display their power openly, or to wage unnecessary war. They had discovered that influence, when applied subtly and with precision, was far more effective than destruction. Alien fleets that attempted aggression were neutralized before action could be taken. Entire campaigns dissolved without a single human ship committing to prolonged engagement. Humans were everywhere and nowhere, moving the pieces on the galactic chessboard with a calm inevitability that left the galaxy in awe and terror. The first alien leaders to confront this reality were broken by it. Prideful commanders who had once dominated hundreds of systems were forced to retreat. Their fleets incapacitated by forces invisible, their strategies rendered meaningless before they could be executed. They spoke of humans with reverence, fear, and disbelief, describing encounters where a single human vessel could render an entire armada ineffective without engaging in open combat. Across the galaxy, whispers spread. The young species, once considered insignificant, had mastered the very rules of the universe itself. They were no longer merely clever, they were dangerous in a way that defied understanding, and their inevitability could not be ignored. By the time the Council fully grasped the implications, the galaxy had already begun to change. Trade routes, military strategies, and political alliances were all altered in response to human dominance. Attempts to challenge humanity were met with preemptive neutralization, and entire fleets vanished from battlefields without a trace. Casualties not from weapons, but from the subtle orchestration of forces beyond alien comprehension. Diplomats and emissaries arrived, hoping to negotiate, only to find themselves rerouted, delayed, or quietly dissuaded by phenomena that human engineers had orchestrated. The galaxy began to accept a terrifying truth. The Council had been correct in declaring humanity dangerous, but even their warning understated the magnitude of human capability. In the end, the first confrontations established a new reality. Humans were not to be underestimated, fought, or controlled. They did not rely on sheer numbers, overwhelming firepower, or brute strength. Instead, they mastered inevitability itself. Every fleet that moved against them became an unwitting participant in a pattern already determined. Every strategy nullified by precision and foresight. The builders extended human influence across light years, unseen but absolute. Alien civilizations were left to marvel, fear, and slowly, reluctantly, respect the quiet power of a species they had dismissed for far too long. The Council had declared humanity dangerous, and they had spoken the truth. Yet danger was merely a word. Humanity's influence was inevitability itself, a force that reshaped the galaxy without visible effort, a silent architect of cosmic order. The first fleets had learned it the hard way, and the galaxy would never forget it. Every civilization, every empire, and every commander knew a new rule. Humans were not to be mocked, challenged, or underestimated. To do so was to invite annihilation, not through war, but through inevitability, precision, and the subtle mastery of the universe itself. The galaxy had begun to awaken to a reality it had never before faced. Alien civilizations that had once moved with confidence, their fleets and fleets of warships spanning entire star systems, now confronted a species whose power was as invisible as it was absolute. Humanity did not seek confrontation, but confrontation sought them, and every encounter ended with the same disorienting result. Fleets immobilized, weapon systems failing, communication networks scrambled, and commanders questioning the very fabric of their understanding. The first fleets that thought they could measure, challenge, or manipulate humans found themselves ensnared by phenomena they could not comprehend, orchestrated by builders operating with precision across distances that spanned hundreds of light years. Reports flowed into Council chambers with increasing urgency. Fleets sent to patrol human-controlled sectors vanished without explanation, only to reappear months later in positions impossible to reconcile with their last known coordinates. Ships reported seeing stars flicker, gravimetric currents bend, and entire planets' magnetic fields subtly distorted. Every fleet, every squadron, and every vessel that approached human space became a study in futility. Alien commanders began to speak in hushed tones of the silent inevitability of humans, a term born of frustration, fear, and awe. It was not human firepower alone that caused these defeats. It was humanity's uncanny ability to manipulate circumstances on cosmic scales, to bend physics to their advantage without ever committing to direct combat. The first direct confrontations were almost surreal in their execution. A single human vessel, unassuming in design, glided into a cluster of alien warships intent on attack. Engines flared and weapons misfired as the alien ships tried to engage, but the humans did not fire a single shot. Instead, the ship's movement, calibrated with impossible precision, caused gravitational distortions that sent entire fleets spinning, some colliding inadvertently, others drifting helplessly in empty space. Command protocols became confused, navigation systems reported conflicting data, and every attempt at coordinated action was thwarted. Alien crews, trained for decades to react to unexpected threats, found themselves paralyzed by forces they could neither anticipate nor counter. Humanity had not yet revealed its true power. It was the mere presence of a calculated mind orchestrating chaos from a distance that reshaped the battlefield. As the days passed, entire campaigns dissolved before they even began. Alien strategists tried to adapt, deploying reinforcements, attempting flanking maneuvers, and even relying on automated systems to anticipate human movements. Each plan, meticulously designed, was rendered ineffective by subtle manipulations that humans had already accounted for. Systems, they believed secure, were subtly altered, with gravitational eddies, subspace anomalies, and energy fluctuations creating invisible obstacles. Humans did not need to reveal themselves. The galaxy's natural forces bent to their will, and fleets found themselves unable to progress, unable to strike, and unable to comprehend why. In every sector where they appeared, humans became the architects of inevitability, shaping outcomes without firing a shot. The builders, humanity's autonomous agents, operated silently in the background. They modified planetary rotations, subtly altered energy flows, and influenced the substructure of space itself to protect human interests. Entire sectors were mapped and manipulated with a precision that alien minds could scarcely grasp. Each disruption, each failure of alien technology, was a calculated move in a cosmic game only humans understood. The galaxy's most powerful warships, the pride of empires and fleets, were rendered impotent by invisible hands. Alien leaders were forced to reconsider everything they knew about warfare, about strategy, and about the limits of power. Humans were dangerous not because they were stronger in the conventional sense, but because they operated on a level of comprehension and patience that no alien could match. By now, fear had replaced arrogance. News of fleet failures spread like wildfire through every major civilization. Histories were rewritten, strategies reconsidered, and entire empires began to see humanity not as a curiosity, but as an inevitable force. The Council convened urgently, debating measures to contain this species, to understand it, to negotiate or control it. But all proposals faltered before the realization that humans did not conform to known rules. They did not act predictably, did not respond to conventional diplomacy, and did not rely on brute force. Humanity's mastery of time, space, and probability had rendered conventional methods useless. The Council realized, belatedly, that their prior dismissal of humans as inconsequential was not just arrogance, it had been catastrophic. The first alien envoys sent to human sectors were met with a quiet, unassuming dominance. Ships arriving to negotiate or spy found themselves rerouted through space-time distortions that delayed arrival indefinitely. Communications were intercepted and scrambled in ways that made dialogue nearly impossible. Any fleet attempting to demonstrate power was neutralized subtly, without violence, as if the galaxy itself had conspired to protect humanity. Alien commanders began to describe humans as ghosts of inevitability, a species that operated everywhere and nowhere, whose influence extended invisibly across systems, bending reality without confrontation. The term spread, whispered in the halls of power across countless civilizations, carrying with it awe, terror, and an unsettling sense of futility. Even the most advanced species, the conquerors, the tyrants, the historians who prided themselves on meticulous record-keeping, found themselves humbled. Fleets that had once been unstoppable were immobilized. Entire campaigns failed before they began. Colonies were observed, and yet humans did not reveal themselves, instead allowing subtle manipulations of the cosmos to secure their objectives. The galaxy began to accept an uncomfortable truth. Humans were inevitable. Their methods were incomprehensible, their patience infinite, and their control of reality beyond the grasp of even the most sophisticated alien minds. Humanity's power was not measured in firepower or numbers, but in foresight, precision, and the ability to shape outcomes across vast scales. By the end of the first century of contact, the Council had no illusions left. They had declared humans dangerous, and in doing so, they had understated the magnitude of the truth. Humans were not merely dangerous. They were a force that defied conventional understanding, a species capable of orchestrating outcomes across galaxies without ever revealing its full hand. Every alien fleet, every strategic maneuver, every diplomatic initiative now had to account for humanity, a species that could not be measured, challenged, or underestimated. They had become the architects of inevitability, the quiet masters of the galaxy, whose patience, intelligence, and precision rendered all opposition futile before it even began. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. The galaxy had begun to understand, in the most terrifying and humbling way, that humanity was not merely another species. It was an inevitability, a force operating beyond the comprehension of even the most advanced civilizations. Those who had once laughed at humans, who had dismissed them as fragile and inconsequential, now stared in disbelief at the consequences of underestimation. The first fleets that attempted to assert dominance were decimated, not through conventional engagement, but through a quiet orchestration of physics, probability, and strategic foresight that alien minds could not predict. Humanity's influence was everywhere, invisible yet absolute, and fleets sent to probe or intimidate found themselves immobilized, misdirected, or subtly destroyed by forces they could neither see nor counter. In human-controlled sectors, the builders, the autonomous constructs designed by humanity, worked silently and with precision. They altered gravitational currents, stabilized or destabilized star systems, and manipulated subspace corridors, creating invisible barriers that frustrated any attempt at alien intervention. Planets once vulnerable to conquest became inaccessible, not by fortifications or weapons, but by the subtle restructuring of reality itself. Alien commanders could not understand what had happened until it was too late. Entire squadrons vanished or were scattered across impossible coordinates, and any attempt to regroup resulted in failure. It was not human might in the conventional sense that conquered these fleets. It was human inevitability, a quiet omnipresence that made resistance futile. The Council convened again, their chambers alive with panic and disbelief. Diplomatic envoys arrived, seeking guidance, only to be forced into delaying loops. Communications scrambled by subtle manipulations in the data streams. For the first time in recorded galactic history, even the oldest and most powerful civilizations felt powerless. Commanders admitted that they could not strategize against humans, for every plan was anticipated, every maneuver predicted, and every action rendered meaningless before execution. Intelligence networks that had once been unrivaled failed to map human influence. The galaxy's most sophisticated sensors could detect ships, colonies, and orbital infrastructure, yet every observation revealed only fragments of an incomprehensible whole. Humanity had made it clear they were beyond understanding, beyond control, and beyond fear in the conventional sense. The first direct confrontations with human vessels became legendary. Alien fleets, confident in their numbers and weaponry, would approach in formation, expecting conventional combat. A single human ship, gliding silently at the edge of perception, could neutralize engines, misdirect navigation systems, and create gravitational anomalies that scattered fleets across light years. Weapons misfired at critical moments, communications failed, and alien crews began to despair. Entire campaigns collapsed without a single human shot fired. It was as if humans were not merely fighting, they were rewriting the rules of engagement, reshaping the battlefield itself to ensure victory without confrontation. Even the most cunning tacticians began to whisper in fear. Humans did not fight in the ways we understood. They orchestrated outcomes that made resistance impossible. Meanwhile, humanity's influence extended beyond direct encounters. Their colonies expanded silently, their research continued, and their builders propagated, extending human reach in ways invisible to alien observers. Fleets attempting to scout human systems were rerouted, delayed, or intercepted by phenomena that appeared natural but were carefully engineered. Entire star systems became inaccessible, either as protective measures or as demonstrations of human inevitability. The galaxy slowly began to accept a horrifying truth. Humans were not merely a species, they were a universal force, a presence that could not be confronted, predicted, or challenged. Every move the aliens made was anticipated, and the very fabric of space seemed to bend subtly to humanity's will. Political and military leaders across the galaxy were forced into a new reality. Alliances shifted, old rivalries paused, and fleets that had once dominated sectors now hesitated at the edge of human space. Diplomacy became cautious, almost reverent, for even the most aggressive civilizations understood that provocation could trigger consequences far beyond comprehension. Reports circulated of entire fleets immobilized by invisible forces, of alien leaders reconsidering their strategies in desperation, and of long-held assumptions about power, technology, and superiority being shattered. Humans did not boast. They did not wage unnecessary war, yet their mere presence imposed a new order across the stars. Within human colonies, life continued as usual, though under the quiet watch of builders. Scientists, engineers, and strategists worked in seamless coordination, guided by foresight, intuition, and the invisible hand of humanity's overarching plan. Every action, from the development of advanced propulsion systems to the subtle restructuring of planetary energy grids, was calculated for maximum long-term impact. Humanity's patience was infinite, their intelligence precise, and their influence silent yet undeniable. While alien civilizations panicked and fleets faltered, humans expanded knowledge, strengthened their defenses, and ensured that the galaxy's perception of them remained one of subtle inevitability. By the end of these early confrontations, the galaxy had learned a new truth. Humans were not merely dangerous, they were inescapable. Attempts at aggression, espionage, or negotiation failed against an intelligence that operated on scales no alien species could comprehend. Entire campaigns were neutralized before they began, fleets immobilized without a fight, and leaders forced to reconsider centuries of assumptions about dominance and strategy. Humanity's patience, precision, and mastery of the cosmos had rewritten the rules. No longer was victory determined by firepower or fleet size. Victory had been redefined by understanding, foresight, and inevitability. Humans were not just a species, they were a universal principle, a force that reshaped the galaxy simply by existing, silent yet omnipotent and utterly unstoppable. By the time the final confrontations unfolded, The galaxy had already learned the immutable truth. Humanity could not be challenged, predicted, or defeated by conventional means. The alien empires that had once regarded themselves as the masters of the stars now faced a species that had transformed inevitability into a weapon. Entire fleets, once symbols of invincibility, had been neutralized by the subtle orchestration of forces humans could manipulate at will. Ships that had never seen human form were immobilized, their engines frozen by gravitational distortions, their weapons failing without explanation. Even the most advanced fleets found themselves at the mercy of phenomena they could neither analyze nor counter. Humanity's influence was everywhere, invisible yet absolute, extending from the smallest colony to the edges of known space. The Council, once arrogant in its omnipotence, could only watch as reports arrived detailing the final stages of humanity's silent conquest. Fleets that had dared to probe, invade, or intimidate human territories were shattered not by direct assault, but by forces that defied understanding. Communications loops trapped entire squadrons in endless cycles of repetition. Sensors failed across multiple wavelengths, and the very laws of physics seemed to bend subtly around human-controlled sectors. Strategists and tacticians admitted, in hushed and fearful tones, that humans had mastered a level of foresight that was effectively omniscient. The galaxy had believed it could measure power, but humans had rewritten the metrics entirely. It was no longer a question of firepower, numbers, or technology. It was a matter of inevitability, and humans held it absolutely. The Builders, humanity's autonomous agents, now operated across multiple star systems simultaneously, invisible and unstoppable. They repaired infrastructure, maintained orbital grids, and manipulated subspace pathways to ensure that humans could act decisively while remaining unseen. Entire alien fleets found themselves ensnared in these orchestrations. A formation attempting to blockade a human colony drifted helplessly into a gravitational eddy engineered by the Builders, while a supply convoy was rerouted through an energy distortion that rendered its engines useless. Every attempt at resistance became a demonstration of futility, as humans reshaped the battlefield without firing a shot, achieving outcomes that alien commanders could only describe as miraculous, terrifying, and incomprehensible. Even the most powerful alien leaders, who had once declared humans a minor threat, now understood that underestimation had been catastrophic. Entire empires reconsidered their approaches to expansion, warfare, and diplomacy, knowing that human patience and strategy exceeded anything they had ever imagined. When humans finally revealed themselves to some fleets, it was not as conquerors, but as inevitabilities, ships gliding silently through space, unmoving until the precise moment action was required, then executing maneuvers so perfect that fleets were neutralized before they could respond. The galaxy's most sophisticated weapons systems failed to target these vessels. Shields became irrelevant, and sensors betrayed their operators. Every confrontation was not a battle. It was a demonstration of cosmic mastery. Humanity's colonies expanded, but not with the visible fanfare one might expect. While alien civilizations panicked, humans quietly reinforced sectors, developed new technologies, and extended the reach of their builders. Entire planetary systems were shielded or restructured without fanfare, yet the consequences were undeniable. Intruding fleets were disoriented, supply chains collapsed, and military formations dissolved. Humans understood that the true measure of power lay not in visible force, but in subtle manipulation and absolute foresight. Alien civilizations could only observe, powerless, as humans operated on scales that defied comprehension, shaping reality itself to serve their objectives. The Council attempted to intervene, desperate to reassert control over a galaxy they had once dominated. Diplomatic envoys, warships, and intelligence networks were all deployed, but each effort was quietly neutralized before it could achieve anything. Communications were intercepted and misdirected, ships failed in mid-coordination, and entire campaigns were rerouted into dead ends orchestrated by humans. By now, the phrase "humans are dangerous" was no longer a warning, it was an understatement. They were no longer merely a threat, they were an inevitability that had reshaped the galaxy, a silent force that no empire could contest, a species whose understanding of strategy, physics, and foresight had made all opposition obsolete. The final confrontation, when it came, was not fought in the conventional sense. Alien fleets had gathered, desperate for a decisive strike, believing that overwhelming numbers could finally overcome human ingenuity. But humans did not meet them in battle. Instead, human vessels and builders orchestrated a sequence of cosmic phenomena so precise that fleets dissolved into chaos before a shot was fired. Engines failed simultaneously, weapons misfired, and navigational systems betrayed their operators. Fleets drifted helplessly in the void, collisions inevitable, formations collapsing. Alien leaders were left to witness the futility of their pride, realizing that humanity's power was not in the weapons they carried, but in the orchestration of the universe itself. At the end of this long sequence of inevitabilities, the galaxy fell silent. Alien civilizations had witnessed something they could not fully explain, a species whose mastery of foresight, patience, and subtle manipulation had rendered centuries of military development irrelevant. Humans had not fought to conquer, they had demonstrated control, precision, and inevitability on a scale that no other species could match. Entire empires, once confident in their dominance, now trembled. The builders remained unseen, the humans unassuming, yet the effect was absolute. The galaxy had been reshaped not by war, but by inevitability, strategy, and the quiet application of intelligence beyond comprehension. In the aftermath, the alien empires understood the final truth. Humans were no longer just participants in the galaxy, they were its silent architects. The Council, humbled and terrified, could only acknowledge that every declaration of danger, every underestimation, and every act of arrogance had been met with consequences beyond reckoning. Humanity's silence, its patience, and its foresight had reshaped the cosmos itself. The stars themselves seemed to bend around human influence, fleets immobilized not by firepower but by inevitability, and civilizations forced to reconsider the very meaning of power. Thus, the galaxy learned to fear, respect, and ultimately revere humanity, not for conquest, not for aggression, but for the quiet certainty that humanity could and would orchestrate outcomes across the cosmos with precision, patience, and inevitability. Those who had mocked, challenged, or doubted the species now understood. Humans were beyond fear, beyond control, and beyond defeat. They had become the architects of reality, the silent masters of the stars, and the inevitable force that would define the future of the galaxy. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same.